Hi guys, welcome to SimLive. My name is Kiki and today I'll be creating Elsa from Frozen. And I franken-meshed her hair using these three hairstyles. And before I did that, I actually sculpted the entire hairstyle. I sketched it out first and then took it to Blender to sculpt. And I was very happy with the result of the sculpt itself, but in the end I struggled getting it game ready in the end. And whilst I was creating, sculpting the hair, I got a very good idea what the hair was made of, and I figured, oh, actually I could use some of the actual hairs in game to do that as well. But because the sculpting itself took such a long time and was such a big process, I thought I'm going to use the video material anyway, even though I did not use that at all. So I scrapped that idea. I will show what it eventually looked like a bit later on, but I scrapped that idea and I went over to franken-meshing it itself, just because it is just a little bit easier with it being a lighter hairstyle. Just FYI, I won't be doing any more light-haired characters. Just dark hair from now on. But whilst I was sculpting that, I actually, I was thinking, I was like, oh, actually we have a hair in game that can do this, or we have a hair in game that can be this bit. So yeah, I used the bangs from the double ponytail, and then I used the bun from the wig, the Leia wig, because that has a little twirly bit in it. And then I used this braided base game hairstyle for the twisted updo, I guess you would call it, because whilst I was sculpting it, my sculpt actually started looking like a braid, and I initially didn't want to use this one because while it's supposed to be a swirl or a twist, it's not supposed to be a braid. But I got the idea, like, oh, I could just remove one part of the braid like I just did, and then pull the other hair over, and then it literally looks like a twist. Problem solved. Can just franken-mesh it. I do end up having to tweak the texture on the UV map just a little bit to take out those sharp edges and corners right there. But yeah, so the fringe from the bangs from the double ponytails, and then the twist updo from the Space Game hair, and then the Leia swirl from the Leia wig. I guess it's a wig because it's in the hat category, and if it was a hairstyle it would come in other colors as well. But it doesn't, which, was unfortunate, because if it would have come in this blonde style, it would have saved me an extra step. But it doesn't. Fair enough. I mean, I'll be honest, I never create the hairstyles in other colors because, well, I'm creating it for a specific character. I'm not creating it for everybody. You can see it as a cosplay. Your sim is cosplaying. So yeah, what am I doing? What am I up to? Because I just went on a little tangent there. Right now I am adding, oh sorry, I've got a cold. I'll try not to sniff anymore. If not, I'm gonna edit it out and you'll hear like these weird little cuts. That will be because I sniffed. Yeah, my colleague actually made me, gave her cold to me. Thank you. So rude. Anyway, I am right now meshing the bun to the rest of the hair, and I am not, even though at the time I was like, ooh, this will create a great transition, not in the UV map. I could have definitely been a little bit more intelligent about how I attach the one mesh to the other mesh. And right now that swirly bun, also because of its color, also looks very much turd-like, but oh well. I will be changing the color later, so right now it's like a dip dye. A very odd dip dye. So now I've combined all the meshes together, and now I'm going to have to tweak the map, the UV maps that are combined together, so that they all have some space on the UV map itself, some free clear space. So that bun, the layer bun, sat over the ear, because usually it would hide the ear, but obviously we've moved the bun so it can't sit over the ear anymore, otherwise you would actually see that texture over the Sim's ear, and we don't want that. What else did I want to say about this? Oh yes, and I do remember, because before the whole sculpting idea, I did actually try franken-meshing this first, and I moved the braid. So I made sure not to move the braid this time, because the braid, the hairline actually continues into the braid, or the twist. I guess I turned it into a twist. And that's a very difficult thing to adjust if you move the braid. So I made sure to move the fringe, the bangs, and leave the twist in its position where it was before. Oh, I'm already in Photoshop. I didn't even notice that. What a tit. So in Photoshop, I made sure to export all the UV maps so I could use those as a guide. So also, once I adjusted the position, I exported that UV guide so I could use it as a guide. That's a lot of guides in one sentence, but in here as well, whilst combining all of this. And here I'm just adjusting the color of the swirl. Oh, I've got two swirls now. I mean the bun swirl. So there's the updo swirl and the bun swirl. Nah, the bun is also an updo. The side hair twist. Yeah, that's a twist and that's a swirl. Okay, I figured it out. So anyway, here I'm just adjusting the color to be more of the platinum blonde that Elsa has. I did use the dirty blonde hair color, or the honey blonde hair color, for it, because that's just my favorite blonde color in the game. And I've just added a cube, because I'm gonna use the cube to use the bouillon modifier. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Bouillon. Sounds a bit French, no? Bouillon modifier to create the hat cut. So that just slices off that part that the cube covers, and then I'm just pulling that edge closer to the head, so that once the hat will be on top of her head, it looks like the hair is just kind of tucked underneath there. And I noticed that the bouillon modifier, or the bouillon modifier, always kind of destroys the, or creates errors in the weight painting. So if you do use that technique to cut off the hair, just make sure that you repaint it to the head, because otherwise it's gonna glitch out like hugely once you take that hairstyle in game. And then just again, weight painting it to make sure that it is attached to the head and won't end up flying around like crazy, like it's possessed or something. So taking it to the Sims 4 Studio, uploading the mesh, which is going to look really weird because obviously I haven't adjusted the texture, and there we go, that's it with the texture. Just adjusting the thumbnail colors. And whilst I'm doing that, I'm also using the decimate modifier to then create lower levels of detail. And I'm doing that whilst I'm importing them, because importing usually takes a little bit of a while. And there we go. Now I'm going to create the normal map and the specular map. And for a change, I actually did it so that I didn't have to adjust anything later. So just deleting the hairline for creating the normal map, creating it in a grayscale, and then I'm going to save it as JPEG to make sure that the back is white, that it has a white background, and then I'm going to upload that into this nifty little website that creates a normal map. Now the Sims 4 Studio actually uses a bump map, so we're going to turn this into a bump map rather than a normal map by creating an alpha and pasting the red over the alpha and then the green over the blue and the red. And now I'm over to the specular, So again, creating a grayscale image for that. I'm making it a bit darker, which looks nothing like the usual specular maps that these hairs come with, but it worked. It had exactly the amount of specular that I wanted for it. And it's also, as you can see, quite dark in the mask, because otherwise I find it just ends up looking like liquid or something. Really shiny. But that's the hair in game. I'm very happy with how it turned out. So this is my own sculpt. I hadn't finished the texture at this point, so it would have looked better, but as you can see, I struggled with the transition with the hairline going into the hair. And that was the thing that I was unable to fix, and why I eventually ended up chucking it. Now we're just putting some hats on there just to show you that the hats do work, or the hat cuts do work. And even with a little kitty one. So onto the crown. I started this one a little bit different. Can't speak. So previously I tried to like mesh all of those shapes, and now I thought maybe not. Maybe I'll actually just create a solid mesh and then use the SimGlass shader, and so that it will just show the texture that I'm going to paint on it later on. And it does work to a certain extent. I think it would have worked better if I wouldn't have halved the texture as I will. Like, I'm just using unmapping one side so that it can be portrayed onto both sides, and I think that is causing a little bit of an issue with the seam, but it's so minute that I'm actually quite happy with how it turned out, so I'm leaving it. I'm not going back to change that. So now I'm opening some earrings, even though I will eventually put the UV map on the glass section just for glasses, just because that's a bit more space for me to actually paint on, to have a little bit more higher detail than if I would have had to actually fit that texture in the space for earrings, for instance. And here I did not realize that when I combined the earrings to the crown that I forgot to apply the mirror modifiers. So here, when I was just unwrapping the UV1 map, I realized it, and I just reapplied the mirror modifier. just worked on it for ages, didn't even realize that I only had half a mesh. So now I've taken it into Photoshop, and now I'm going to color in or paint the crown, and I'm actually just using existing textures from the game. I think this is from a mirror. And the liquefy tool really just is like, oh my god, why did I not know about this like years ago? It makes life so easy. So I really like the texture that I'm using here, just with the raised surface there, the beveled edges. So I will be doing applying that to the rest of the crown that I just already painted. I did film that, but the video just wouldn't save. Sometimes that happens if I have too many, if there's not enough space on my computer to actually store it, then it won't process properly and I won't be able to save it. So in a moment you'll just see that suddenly all of the crown has beveled edges, and it's just because I lost the footage for that. So I'm using this in-game texture from, I think, one of the crystals to create the crystal inside the center of the crown. It is very, very low res, but it's okay. I'll be, you know, warping it to such an extent that in the end you can't really tell. See, it already looks a lot better. And then I just give it a couple of highlights to give it a bit more shape. And then with the smudge tool, there we go. No low res anymore. No more low res. And now I just need to fit that painting onto where I've actually put the UV map on the texture. And there we go. Then I'm just importing the mesh and the texture, and right now it has like a pink background. But I'm going to change in the warehouse, I'm going to change the shader to SimGlass, and I could actually upload this mesh for all the levels of details because it is so because it barely has any vertices at all. So onto the dress. For this I combined these two items, so the top and the dress, because there's a little jewel, because it has a collar and it has a little jewel by the collar, by the little dimple in the neck. I don't know what that thing is called. Next to the clavicles in the middle. And I thought that the knot of that little tie there would be perfect for that. So I'm just using literally the bust of the top, and then the arms and the rest from that dress that comes from City Living. I don't know where the top is from actually. Maybe City Living as well? Ooh, I'm not sure. So in Blender there's actually a very handy little tool at the bottom there. You can select the magnet and then set to vertices, and then it will actually just paste vertices on top of each other, and I'm using that in the UV map as well. I'm just adjusting the UV map so it will be easier to paint later on, so I won't be, you know, stuck with any seams. So onto Photoshop. Now I'm just creating a grayscale for everything because I'll actually be doing the color as an overlay, because I tried to be as non-destructive as possible whilst I was painting this, because I wanted to use the grayscale items for the normal map and the specular map, and then I wouldn't have to do this process 3 times, and also it would be easier to go back and change anything if I needed to adjust something. Again, like, the liquefy tool is my friend. It and I are besties now. So this is the first outfit and, well, I guess a look that I'll be creating for Elsa. Of course, I also want to do the one when she goes all "let it go" and then whoosh, her hair comes down, suddenly the twist is a braid and everything. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that one as well. I won't be singing because Disney will copyright me. Fair enough, it is their stuff. So just what you see me grab from the other window there is I've already prepared the patterns and the colours beforehand. I drew them all out with the path tool. And there we are, the finished look. So I did also do the golden trims around the top and around the waist, but again that video material wouldn't save because I didn't have enough space on my computer at the time. But yeah, that was the finished dress, and now I'm just creating a sim. I mean, I did try to create her, so I did a sim before this, try to create her as close as possible to what Elsa looked like in the animation, but that just ended up looking really weird, so I'm doing a simlive version just because the features are so extreme. In the animation, I just had to dial it down just a little bit just to make it not look so weird in game. And I did some makeup for her as well. I'll leave that link, download link in the description if you want it. And there she is, Elsa. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a lovely day. See you later and bye bye.